Hi guys, hi Sonal, hi Harsh, thank you for joining in. Um, I would like you guys to introduce yourself to the audience.
Harsh, you can start.
Sure. So, hi everyone, my name is Harsh, and I'm currently working as a software developer at Quantsite Labs, where I work with a lot of open source projects, namely SkyPy and QHub. And I'm also an incoming ST intern at HackerRank. And currently, I'm in my final year of undergraduate studies at Satyabhama University. So, I pretty much work with everything related to web engineering, DevOps, technical documentation, and some continuous integration and development. So if you have any questions about open source development or DevOps, feel free to hit me up. Over to you, Sonal.
Thank you, Harsh. So, hi everyone. My name is Sonal, and I am in my third year of undergrad. I will be joining as a SWE intern at Microsoft in summer 2022. And I basically work with web and mobile, and I'm still exploring, different areas to actually get a grasp of everything. So, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah.
That's great, that's great. Since it's a session on MLH Fellowship, we would like to know what is exactly MLH Fellowship.
Sonal, would you like to go
Sonal,
first?
you can go first.
So the MLH Fellowship is basically a 12-week training program for everyone, basically students. So it revolves around interacting with people and building projects and learning new technologies and basically coming together from like people come together from all around the world, and they are divided into certain pods, and then they interact with each other, and they uh, build new things on based on the themes that they are given to them. So and this fellowship is divided into different tracks. So based on what track you are in, you work on that track and on that particular technology. So like there are, I guess, I'm from the pre fellowship track, so it's now called the prep fellowship. And there are certain other tracks like software engineering, open source, and there's one more. What is it?
Uh,
Production
the
engineering.
production fellowship. Yeah,
Production engineering, yeah. So these are the four tracks, and Harsh can tell us more about it.
sure. So, like Sonal has pretty much described what exactly MLH fellowship is, but I can most possibly go around why this fellowship was established. So, Mike Swift, like I have written an article at Scholarship Track about MLH fellowship and how to get into it. And my first paragraph actually talks about what Mike Swift said at GitHub at a GitHub conference. So he mentioned that when a college student gets into their studies, they usually follow like a stepwise career growth. So initially they learn some programming language, then they make some projects, they apply for some internships or open source contributions, and then they finally get a good job. So what MLH Fellowship is doing is basically bridging the gap that we have while we are like looking for our first job or the first experience. So it is completely an educational program. People can think of it as an internship or maybe as a part-time job. It is not. It is just an educational program that allows the folks to get some sort of professional experience while working with some mentors, with some open source experts, by contributing to some projects or by making their own projects so that they can further boost their portfolio. So if you're someone who is right into their sophomore or the junior year of college, you are looking to build some projects, but you don't have any, and you're also looking for some mentorship because mentorship is quite scarce in the tech industry, then MLH Fellowship can be the right program for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Harsh and Sonal. That was a very detailed description. Sonal, you mentioned about the three tracks. Could you guys just tell us more about what are actually the three tracks and what actually they cover?
Actually, there are four tracks, if I'm not wrong,
Okay.
including the prep fellowship. But the prep fellowship is actually like the name suggests, it's a prep fellowship. So it's like they're preparing you for the actual fellowship, which is the three tracks. So it's a much shorter version of a fellowship to get the the participants or the candidates like who are selected to get to give them an experience as to what actually happens in the actual fellowship. So to summarize, there are four tracks. So first one being the prep fellowship. It was earlier called pre fellowship. Before that, it was called explorer track. and that was a much longer track. So the prep fellowship is now like around 4 weeks, and it basically its main aim is to, like I said, to make you familiarize with the process and how things work in the actual fellowship track. And if you are new to the development area, so it will be really helpful for you to explore what you are interested in, uh, based on what you are building, and by interacting everyone. So it's very important. It's really good for people who are just starting out in their careers. So like, I was selected in the pre fellowship, so I chose that track because I wanted to explore and I wanted to learn. So that's why I went with the pre fellowship instead of the actual tracks. So if you are someone who's just starting out, then the prep fellowship is a great start for you. Now coming to the three tracks, so this is the actual 12-week fellowship, and these are, like I said, software engineering, production engineering, and one more. What is it called?
Open source.
Open source. Yeah. So these are the three tracks. So open source, like the name suggests, it's about open source. So if you are really enthusiastic about open source, then you can consider applying for the open source track. So I believe, as far as I've interacted with people in open source track, you actually work on large scale open source projects, and it's very good for you to, if you are looking to get some real experience, or to like, on working on real big projects, then this track is really helpful for that. And I guess Harsh works with open source, so I think he will be able to cover more about this.
Yeah. So I was not a part of open source track. I was a part of Explorer track. But let me just recount the history behind multiple MLH fellowship tracks because there has been a lot of experimentations. So when MLH fellowship started, I guess it was back in April or May 2020. It had just had one track, which was the open source track. So the folks who got selected into that, even my mentor Karan, so right now he's pursuing his MS, like he got to contribute at Bento ML, which is a machine learning framework. And at that time, MLH Fellowship had a lot of tracks, had a lot of open source projects. So some of them were like React Native, Jest, and these kind of big scale open source projects that anyone would really like to contribute to. After batch zero, they decided to expand the program, and this is why they collaborated two more tracks. The first one was the Explorer track, and it was exclusively for those people who would like to do some hackathon projects. So MLH, just as the name suggests, and if you know about it, it is all about hackathons, and they promote this hacker culture quite heavily. So they wanted to have a track that is exclusive for hackathons and also help the people who just like to build their own projects from scratch. And the third track was the externship track, and this is where you get to work with some startups, banking companies, and even the US Department of Defense, namely the Pentagon. So some people had issues with the externship track because there were a lot of accusations against the DoD, basically the Pentagon, and some of the original mentors who were part of the MLH fellowship, they had to back off. But still, it was great. A lot of people applied to it, and I was one of them to get selected in the Explorer track. But again, after a few more iterations, they removed the Explorer track and they replaced that with the Prep Fellowship, which was to mainly prepare the students to go for the actual fellowship. And now it is a pre fellowship. The externship track was also removed. And now we have the software engineering track and the production engineering track. So with software engineering, you will get to work with open source projects as well as some core software engineering projects. And with the production fellowship, you will be working with experts from Facebook to develop your skills in site reliability engineering. So if concepts like Docker, DevOps, Kubernetes, Helm, like these kind of things basically fascinate you, then production engineering is particularly suited for your case. But you just need to make sure that the application is quite clear about it because production fellowship might not be open for Indians. I'm not very sure about it, but open source and software engineering is open for Indians. So if you'd like to make some really good impact by contributing to large scale projects, you can definitely go for it.
Thank you so much, guys. So, like, next question would be, so how does one choose which track he or she fits in? So, like, as you mentioned, there are three tracks, actually four tracks, and like moving on, we'll be having three tracks. So, open source, and like, how does one choose like which one he or she should go forward with? So, Harsh, you can begin.
Sure. So when I was like applying for MLH fellowship for the very first track, I went for the open source track because I had very less idea about open source. So I wanted to give it a try, maybe contribute to a few projects and develop my skills in that. But since I did not get selected in it, I found another internship, and that helped me understand open source much better. And later, I went to into contribute to some really big projects like OpenMind, AWS, Uber, and all of that. So from the open source side, I was pretty covered up. I was not really looking for anything else. But one thing that I was pretty much lacking it was personal projects. So my resume was completely blank, and I had only those projects which I had made like 8 to 10 months back. And I was really looking for some change, especially to work with some latest technologies and all of that. So Explorer track basically fit in my bill because I had this hacker mindset as well. I wanted to go to hackathons and participate in them. So I applied to it, and my application was quite well suited for the Explorer track. So one of my code samples that I showcased during my application, it was also built during a hackathon, and it had led us to win the Smart India hackathon as well as Hack Infinity 2.2. So I thought that it was really good to showcase that code sample, and that was like my lucky charm, and I got into it. So after 3 months of experience, I think that the Explorer track was the right fit for me because some of the projects that I developed during this track, it is still in development right now, and some of them have really got me some good internship offers. Some of them one at HackerRank, even at QuantSight, and one at Red Hat. So I go to an interview and I showcase my projects, and these are the things that I did, and that creates a lot of positive impact. Over to you, Sonal.
Like in my case, like I said, I wanted to get some experience and I wanted to get started out. So that's why I went with the pre-fellowship track. So it was when I went through what the pre-fellowship track was and what it had to offer, it really fit well with what I was expecting from the fellowship. So since, like I said, I wanted to get started out, I wanted to interact with people and actually work on something, some new technologies and something new, and build some cool projects for my resume, and it really fit well, so I decided to apply for that. And before that, when before I got selected for this application, I had also applied for the Explorer track, and then I applied for the pre-fellowship track. So like I said, I wanted to explore, so that's why I went with the pre-fellowship. And overall experience was like up to the mark. It was what I had expected. I got to work with so many like new technologies, and it was like within a day we were learning a new technology and we were making a nice project. And the project that we built is like we're still working on it. I'm still going through like how we can improve it and everything. So yeah, that's how I chose my track. And like for you, like I said, if you are someone who's just starting out and you are someone who wants to gain some experience, you can go with the smaller fellowship. But if you have some experience and you want to gain more experience by working on large scale projects, then based on your interest and the eligibility, of course, you can choose like between the three tracks, which is the software engineering, open source, and the production engineering. So it's completely like based on what your aim is and what you like want to get out from the fellowship. So yes.
Oh, that's really amazing, Sonal, that you're still working for the improvement. So let's move on to the next question. So, what is the eligibility criteria, or like, are there any prerequisites to apply for MLH fellowship? Um, Anybody, guys? Harsh,
Sonal,
maybe
you
you
can
can
go
take it.
first.
Oh,
Yeah, you can go
Sonal.
first.
Okay, I don't think there are any prerequisites if you want to apply for any track. So, like, I guess there are some prerequisites for the production engineering track. So, I'm not I don't think it's open for Indians. I think it's for people overseas. So, the production, you can just go through the eligibility for the production engineering track, that what they look for in the candidate. And going for the other remaining three tracks, I think everyone can apply. People like even if you are just starting out in your undergrad, or if you're ending your undergrad, so eligibility seems flexible. And I think is there like an age limit cap? I don't quite remember. Yeah, so
I
I
guess
don't think.
16 years and
Yeah, you have to
older.
be. Yeah, you have to be 16 or older. No, not really. Like even if you are younger, you need a parental improvement that you can apply. So like in my track, there were people from who were pursuing their schooling. They were like in 11th 12th grade. So if you are even in your school years, you can still apply, but you will need your parents to sign or something, like there's a parental sign off. So that's the eligibility. So yeah, did I miss anything?
So I guess there are some eligibility rules. Even if it is not reflected in the application process, it is duly considered like on the back end of it. So when you're filling up the application, I'm not exactly sure, but they give you some 10 to 12 pointers asking you to describe a development experience. So they might ask whether you have built some REST API or some GraphQL API, or did you build some web application ever? And this is what they most commonly use for determining the eligibility of a candidate. So the most basic eligibility would be for you to know a particular programming language, because even though MLH Fellowship is an educational program, they won't be handholding you through the entire process. They want you to be self-independent. They want you to be independent, a self-starter, and self-motivated. So you need to have an understanding of at least one language. You can work with some particular technologies, and you can get the work done within the required time. So have an understanding of these, and maybe have a couple of good to have projects. It can be something as simple as a tic-tac-toe game, or something as complex as a social media application. It should just showcase that whatever you have learned, you can actually apply it in a practical setting. So a lot of things would be considered during the application pipeline: your resume, your past development experience, your code sample. But overall, the single requirement would be for you to exactly understand what you want to do. And once you have an understanding of that, everything would be seamless.
Oh, that's nice. So, like, moving on to the next question. So, what was the application and selection process like for you guys? So, apparently, we have covered a lot of it, but if you guys want to add on anything which you might have missed or something like that.
Mm,
So I guess I will
yes.
start first.
Yeah, sure. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Harsh.
yeah. So I applied for batch zero. It was for the open source track, but literally saying I did not fit in the eligibility criteria like by a margin. So they did not decided to take me in at that time. But for the next batch, they sent me some sort of a referral code. So when the applications were released, I was the first one to put in that referral code, complete my application, and send it for review. So after a few weeks, I got my first interview call. It was with a past MLH fellow whose name was Ryan. I guess he's a pod leader or maybe working with the MLH Fellowship admissions team now. But this was just the first interview, and you can just maybe think of it as a cultural fit round, where someone from the MLH team basically comes and interviews you and tries to determine what sort of skills you have and what sort of motivation do you hold to become a part of this fellowship program. So this was pretty much a seamless process. We had a nice talk about the projects that I was doing, the experience that he had in the past batch. And at that time, I was mentoring a hackathon, which was sponsored by MLH. So we were having a nice talk about how the hackathon is going and what are my experiences. So once that interview was over, I received a follow-up email like within a few hours that asked me to like schedule another interview with a technical person who would be taking my technical round. And this person is an ex GitHub engineer, and he was the one like who literally worked on the whole Hacktoberfest website. So if you might have seen the fancy Hacktoberfest websites by DigitalOcean, it was this person who basically developed it from the scratch. So I was super nervous about it because I had very less experience of like giving interviews to these kind of people, and I was like really worried about what he might be asking me. Coincidentally, one of my friend, his name is Sarthak, and he's like my co-GSOD intern at Mocha Global. So he was also applying for MLH Fellowship, but for the open source track. And he recently had his technical interview, and he was pretty chilled about it. So I decided to prepare for it, basically go through my entire code base line by line, understand what each file or what each directory is doing, and then went in for the interview. And it was such a seamless process because no questions were asked. It was simply like demonstrate your project, tell me some of the best parts about it, tell me like what are your future plans, and we were done. And once I like got my interview over, I received a mail from Mike like within 24 hours that I had been selected for the MLH Fellowship, and it was a watershed moment for me. It was simply great. So
Yeah, that
overall,
was
it was
pretty
seamless
quick.
process. Yeah, that was pretty quick, but I have seen a lot of people waiting for like 2 months or 3 months maybe getting the status on their application. So it happens when there are a lot of people applying at the same time.
You
Yeah,
really impressed the GitHub engineer.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who had to wait like for months.
So even after waiting for months, you do get fruitful results.
Yeah, yeah. So like I did not receive the referral, so I just had to like apply. I just went and filled the application, and like the first time I filled, it was for the Explorer track. So I filled the application. I went for the first interview. I went for the second interview, and then I did not make it to the Explorer round. I guess when you receive the mail, like after you are like if you're not selected and you receive the rejection mail, they also mention a little bit about like what went wrong and where you
Yeah.
can improve. Yeah, so in my case it was that the timeline was a little messed up. So like it's like uh, there were enough people, they already had enough people in the track, so they were like you
Mhm.
can consider applying for the future tracks. I was like okay, sure, no problem. So that's what happened with the Explorer track. So then I applied for the pre-fellowship, and the application process was similar to that of ours. We had the application, and in there, like he mentioned during the eligibility, that they ask you like what all stuff you know, like have you worked with these things or not. And it's not like necessary for you to know everything. It's just I think they just want to know like how much tech development experience you have based on what track you have chosen. So like if you have chosen a real fellowship track and you have like a good programming experience, so that will be a plus one. So then there were just some eligibility questions in the application, like if you are over the age of this, if you are, where do you live, like if what are you pursuing, etc., etc. And then there were essay questions as well in the application. So there were two essay questions, two or three essay questions, two or three essay questions. And yeah, they revolved around the first one, I guess, was like why do you wish to be a part of the fellowship. And then another question was like we had to submit a code sample, so everyone has to submit a code sample. So it's important for you to have a good project, like not like a tutorial based project, like if you just open YouTube and you follow the tutorial. It's important to have a good project that you built. It can be anything, like if you had built it during a hackathon, that's more than good enough. So we had to submit a code sample. So you submit your GitHub repository, and then you have to write a little bit about that code sample, like what it is, what did you work on. And the final question was what did you like, it's all about the project, like what you did and how it works, and what did you learn from the project. So these essay questions are pretty important. So it's important, like take your time, but don't really fuss about it too much. Okay, essay questions, I need to get it reviewed, etc. uh, so just mention your motivation, like why you actually want to apply. Don't go for the cliches and a cliched answer that it's a very nice fellowship, etc. Just mention like why exactly you are looking forward to the fellowship and the track that you have chosen, and it will be good to go. So be true to what you believe in and just go ahead. And it's important to know your project thoroughly as well. So after this application, so these are the three essay questions that they ask. So once you clear the eligibility round, then there's the first interview, and this is a very casual interview. We are just chit chatting, and it's just like what is your motivation, what have you been doing, like if you have taken parts in hackathon. And it's a very nice conversation, very casual conversation. And I believe this one is just to check the eligibility. I'm not sure, just to check the eligibility and your motivation, and like what you want to get out of the fellowship. And the next and final round is, like Harsh mentioned, the technical round. So here they won't ask you any questions out of the blue. So don't expect like the actual SW interviews. This is nothing like those SWE interviews. So they won't ask you DSA, or they won't ask you to code. So it's completely based on the project that you have submitted while you were filling your application. So in my case, I submitted one project. Uh, it was a Flutter application which we built during a program. And what happened in the interview was we went through the code base. You only get like 15 minutes, so they prefer not to go for the demo. So they just go into your code base, and they asked me to explain a few lines. Okay, this is written in Dart. So what does this line do? What does this callback does? How does this work with Firebase? So it completely revolves around your project. So it's important to know your project well. And this interview is also very friendly and very casual. They will make you feel very welcome, and it is nothing like you don't have to like worry about it very much. So if you are appearing for one, then all the rest it will go nice.
That's really great. So let's come next to the perks and benefits of being an MLH fellow. So, Sonal, you can continue.
So there are a lot of perks and benefits of being an MNH fellow, like starting from the community. So like I mentioned in the introduction, that people from all around the world, they come together and they are divided into certain groups or pods. And so it's like you get to interact with people from everywhere, and they come from diverse backgrounds and they are exploring diverse technologies. So you get to interact one on one with them, and even your pod leaders and your community leaders. And wait, am I audible? Yeah, so you guys are very still, so I thought I lost you. Anyway, so like I said, like I was saying, so everyone, you get to interact with these people one on one, and it's very friendly, and you can ask any questions that you have about what they do, like where they're working, what they're working on, and if you have any career related questions that you want to ask. So the community and the people that you are with is like one of the best things about this fellowship. Not only like during the fellowship, but you are also connected with them after your fellowship is over. So it's like a small circle, a small friend circle that is being formed when you are in the fellowship, that you can stay connected throughout your uh, what do you call it, professional journey. So this is one of the benefits. And these are now talking about the more benefits. So uh, they are, I guess, track specific. So you get a stipend for the actual fellowship, but for the pre-fellowship, they don't provide you a stipend, because the duration is quite small. So it's just 4 weeks, and they're preparing you for the actual batch. So there is no stipend for the pre-fellowship, but there is a very nice stipend for the 3 tracks. And Harsh, you can continue from there.
Yeah, so I was a part of the Explorer track, and the best part about the Explorer track was we used to have a hackathon almost every 2 weeks. So when we come to hackathons, we have a lot of prizes. So the best part was the pod that I belonged to had been in the grand finale almost each of these hackathons. And my team was the only one which has been the grand finale winner for like two of these hackathons, like out of my pod. So we had like a lot of perks that we got. The first one that the first hackathon that we had, it was simply open innovation. So we could build anything that is innovating something. And we just built a mobile application that can help the visually impaired people see. And that literally blew a lot of people off because they were not really expecting us to complete such a big application within such a small time. So we did not overcomplicate the code base. We kept it simple, stupid, and it just did the work. So we managed to win the grand finale, and what we got was an Amazon Echo Dot. I guess that's the name. And we got some T-shirts. We got a certificate which certified that yes, we have won some MLH Fellowship prizes. The second time we won, it was during the Sprint 4, and it was about developer tools and productivity. And this was the time when I built one of my best projects ever. It was such a small thing, but it did something quite revolutionary. And we again managed to win the grand finale. And this time we got an Arduino kit. Uh, Again, few T-shirts, few certificates, and all of that. So, like on the graduation, we got a few more swags from MLH, which certify that these are the things that we achieved during the program. Like apart from all these materialistic things, we achieved a lot of things on the spiritual side as well. Like we used to have a lot of discussions with our mentors, and we used to discuss a lot of things. So my mentor was particularly more interested towards cybersecurity, penetration testing, full stack development. So he used to give us a showcase of his entire setup, how it can be used, how to set up aliases and everything. Uh, and then we used to talk about how to hack certain systems, like these kind of nerd stuff, which most of the people would not quite tolerate. And finally, we had the CTF week. So I don't know how many people of you know about it, but the last week of MLH Fellowship is totally focused towards CTF, which is capture the flag. So we have like certain flags hidden in some basic things. So like we can hide a flag inside a picture, we can hide a flag inside a website, We can add a flag inside a response header. And what we just need to do is to just go ahead and find that flag. And the more flags that we find, the better position we will have on the leaderboard. So I was sleeping the entire week during the CTF, so I did not enjoy it much. But rest of my pod members did, and it was such a great experience. So the best part about MLH Fellowship is compared to any other professional experience, this education experience can teach you a lot of real world things in a virtual setting. So you will not just get to learn and know about some professional development stuff. You will also get to form relationships with your peers, with your mentors. You will get to know how to manage your time effectively. You will be effectively learning from them as well, because we have this concept of show and tell. So everyone will come and everyone will present a topic and we will be learning from them. So I did a show and tell on time management, which is my best part. Someone else did a show and tell on astrophysics. Someone else did a show and tell on building an entire game in Flutter within just 1 hour. So these benefits, like even if you are not getting any stipend, any compensation, these benefits cannot be simply missed out. And the amount of experience that you will get, you can easily get a good internship out of it. Like Sakshi, who is the founder of Scholarship Track, like she was also my co-fellow, and I guess she's a program manager at Microsoft now. Few of my friends are at Goldman Sachs, Interview, Sabre Corporation. So that was such a great experience.
Yeah, actually, they are all the perks are really lucrative, and yes, definitely something to apply for MLS. So, like any tips for the applications that you have while filling the application, or like the essays that you were mentioning, that how should we go about the essays?
So I guess
So,
I can go first. Yeah.
yeah.
So the very first step is don't underestimate or don't overestimate yourself. Uh, because if you're underestimating yourself, that will create a negative impact on your application, because there are already a lot of competitors basically looking at your place in the fellowship program. If you're overestimating yourself, it might be possible that your project or maybe your resume or your portfolio might not be able to reflect that. So always try to give what you have and what is required for the application. Second, try to optimize your resume a bit. Resume is an essential part of almost any application process. And the better your resume is, the better it is capturing all of the information, the more lucrative it would be. Third, your essay. So your essay should not be some sort of cringy, like I've seen a lot of people mentioning on their essays that they are from a tier 3 college, or they don't have any professional experience, or they don't have any projects. These are the kind of things that people don't actually matter. The best thing for you to test how good your essays are is to just give it to your friend and ask him to be like read it within just 30 seconds. The more information that they will capture within 30 seconds, it will exactly show how much the reviewers will be actually reading it. So make sure that your essays are putting up the most passionate side of yours. You should be passionate about this fellowship, away from all of the hype, away from all of the jargons. It should really show why you think that this fellowship would be beneficial for you in the long run. And also mention what you will be giving out to this fellowship. So we have this question like, what are the recent things that you learned that you can particularly impart to the other developers? So as a developer, we all have a like learning mindset. So if you have learned something, you think you can present it up, just mention about that. Just talk about that. Just talk about your projects, and make it short, make it crisp, so that anyone can easily read it and anyone can identify what they're exactly looking for. And as always, feel free to hit up any past fellows for any application reviews. Like we are more than happy to review it for you and provide you some constructive suggestions. And lastly, your code sample. So your code sample should be actually doing something. It should not be just ripped off from someone else's repository or maybe someone else's tutorial or anything like that. It should be somewhat of a constructive, and even MLH recommends that they particularly look for those code samples that solve a real world thing. So let us say that you built a tool to simplify something or to automate something. That can be a good code sample. You built an entire project, like maybe during a hackathon that is doing some real world stuff. That is a good project. But if you're just creating an e-commerce clone of Amazon by just following some YouTube tutorial, that might not be a good project. And people won't value that much, because everyone can just go ahead and make that same tutorial like you. So make the best project of yours. Make sure that you're following all of the best practices, like put in the necessary linters, put in the necessary documentation, put it on a deploy link, maybe on Heroku, maybe on Firebase, whatever you prefer. Have some good CI/CD pipelines. Make sure that your project page is exactly reflecting what you're trying to do here, and keep all of your commits clean. Make use of proper issues and pull requests, because these are some of the basic things that we will learn during the fellowship program itself. And it would be much better if you already know about these. And once you have all of these stuff, just send in the application, maybe interact with the program managers on the Major League Hacking Discord server, understand like how the application program is going, and fingers crossed, you might get a positive status on your application.
So I guess like Harsh covered like almost everything that you need to know. So I'll just wrap it up. I'll just say just like he said, don't go for the cliched lines. Be true to yourself and what you are hoping to give and get out of the fellowship, and know your project well. It's very important, like when you are submitting the repository, it's important to follow good GitHub practices. And like he said, like with the issues and the pull requests and everything, so make sure everything is nice and it looks good and your readme it looks good, and know your project and how it actually works. Like if you built it with with a team, it's completely all right. If you are submitting a project that you built within a team, then it's while in being when you are in your interview, just mention that okay, this was a group project, and talk about your part, like what you worked on, because it's like since it's a group project, so it will be better for the interviewer to know what was your part and what you handled in the project. So basically, yeah, Harsh, like I said, Harsh covered most of it. And yeah, so just know your project well and write your essays nicely. So all the best.
So, like after the application process, and if you're lucky enough to get shortlisted, comes the interview part. So, like how do you prepare for the interviews, or like any special tips that you need to keep in mind? Sonal, you can go first.
So you'll have two interviews. The first interview will be a non-technical interview, and the second interview will be a technical interview. So the first interview basically revolves around your motivation and why you wish to apply for the MLH fellowship, and what is your motivation, and what are your past experiences. Have you taken part in hackathons, and what are the kind of projects that you've built, and if you've the project that you submitted in your application, like what it does and what excites you about that project and what excites you about technology in general. So it is a very casual conversation. So the tip for this interview would be to be yourself, and whatever, be yourself, be honest, like speak your mind, and just tell them like what your motivation is and why you decided to apply. So just talk about yourself and your motivation. So this interview is very nice, and it's very casual, and it's very friendly. Both of them are very friendly, so this will be completely non-technical. So coming to the second interview, this is a technical interview. It will completely revolve around your project and what you've submitted and the technologies that are related to your project. So they will have you don't get a lot of time, so there's a very high chance that they might not go for the demo of your project. So they will just go through the code of your project, your and they will ask you about your, like why you built this way, like this feature in this way, why you chose to go with these features and not with those features, not those features, and what this line does, what this function does, what this keyword means, and what this like why did you separate out this function. So everything will be related to your project and your code sample. They won't ask you anything out of the blue. The tip for this interview again would be to know your project thoroughly and to know your contributions if it's a group project and what you worked on, and just know these things, and it will be a like a smooth ride for you, the interviews.
I guess Sonal has covered almost all of this. Um, but just adding one more point to it, the whole crux of both of these interviews is to test your communication skills. So if you think you really have a good communication skill, you can really persuade someone, you can really convince someone of the things that you have done. you have like covered most of the part of it, so you don't need to worry much, you don't need to study much. Most of the times while preparing for interviews, just keep a focus on the time part, because I have like heard from a lot of people that they try to explain their project and they spend a lot of the time explaining it, and this did not give the interviewers a chance to basically cross question or give any sort of a feedback. So the interviewers do have the like power to basically determine like how many questions did they ask or what sort of feedback they gave and how the candidate is responsive to this feedback. So you need to make sure that this interview is like a two-way process. It is not like a one-way process where either you are explaining the whole thing or the interviewer is saying the whole thing. It should go two-way. Both you and your interviewer should be talking the whole time, and you really need to show what exactly you have got. And once you have these parts covered up, it is pretty much a smooth ride. If you have reached up to the technical round, it means that you're already a cut above. So you're at the creamy layer. Now you just need to give a little more push to get the final like selection made.
Yeah. So thank you guys. So like we discussed the whole application process and the interview process. So like what was the things that made you stand out from all the competitions that you had? So Sonal, would you like to go first?
Sure. So, what made me stand out? So, I think, I've always loved taking part in hackathons. Exhibit A, Harsh. So, we actually met in a hackathon like a year ago. So, I've always loved taking part in hackathons. And, you know, the main reason behind this is because in hackathons, they provide you diverse and different themes. So it's like a completely totally new theme, and in just 24 or 48 hours you have to make a project. So this is something that I really like and love about hackathons, that it really helps you open your mind and build something in such a short span of time. So like I said, I always loved taking part in hackathons. So I mentioned this in my interview, that I really enjoy taking part in hackathons, and I like how these things are structured, and I like how it's a very good platform, how hackathons are a good platform for someone like me who wants to gain experience and who wants to work on different technologies, how it is a very nice platform, and how the fellowship is kind of but not completely similar to these hackathons. So I believe I portrayed my interest towards like what I had done throughout my career and what I was looking forward to in the fellowship. So yeah, so that's what I mentioned, and uh, they were really like positive about this, that okay, very nice, cool. So yes, that's what I did. And secondly, in my technical interview, like I said, I knew my project well. So they asked me a lot of questions. There were a lot of random questions based on the tech stack of my project. So they were asking me questions about Firebase and Flutter and Dart, and why I made these functions like this, and why I used these existing functions. And I was able to answer them because I have built the project from scratch. So I knew like how things worked, and while I was building that project, what was going inside my mind, so why I made the decisions that I made. So yeah, so it was I remember I was not like, I tend to fumble a lot when being in interview, like nervousness, anxiety, but that time I was not. I was very confident with what I was saying and the questions that they were asking. So I think I portrayed myself very confidently and in a very put together manner. So it was like I knew what I was talking about, and I was not just blabbering on and giving extra information. So yeah, I think that was something that I feel made me stand out. So I was, yeah.
Yeah. So in my case, it was a bit different. I was passionate about hackathons, but one thing that really sticks with me is a project never ends. What I always try to do is extend the projects to some sort of fulfillment. So even the projects that I started at MLH Fellowship, they're still in development in some form or the other. So one of the projects that I built during my second year, it was actually a fake news tracker. And one of the most crude comment that I got from one of my mentors is that we don't exactly understand how your application works. So that really made us think that, okay, this is something that we have not yet figured out. We have like a machine learning model where we given some news, we are getting some output out, but we don't exactly know how reliable this output is. We just cannot say that it is 90% accurate because no one is going to buy that. So after I got rejected in my batch zero track, I actually got selected at another company. Its name is QXF2, and it is actually a quality assurance startup based out of Bengaluru. So I was working there as a software engineer, and one of the first technologies that I came across there was graph algorithms. Sorry, graph databases. So we already know these graph algorithms, but now we have graph databases on top of it, and they're pretty unconventional and different from the standard SQL or NoSQL based database. So I really got a hang of it, and by using these graph database, I got to solve that technical problem that I had encountered during my hackathon project. So apart from a regular internship project, I decided to solve my hackathon problem within the same project itself. So I really had a great command of over the graph databases. And perhaps like we had a lot of discussion about this part. So even in my first round of interview, we had a discussion about how I was using graph databases to like solve company culture issues where people don't seem to talk to each other and they don't seem to interact. And in the next interview, I talked about how I was improving my own project using these graph databases. So these are like some specific interests that I had back at that time. And I guess this simply helped me stand out because I was always looking for something new and that tuned in better for my application. But rest apart, my resume, my application essays, they did the rest of the talking.
Oh yeah. So like any last minute tips or advice for our viewers?
Sonal, would you like to go first?
Um, there's a possibility that your application will take a lot of time. It might take one day, it might take a week, it might take a month, it might even take 3 months. So be patient, because I get a few messages on LinkedIn that it's been 2 days and I have not received the feedback. so, so it might take. So the time actually varies. The like when they are reviewing and when the next batch starts and whatever internal things that are going on. So be patient. You will receive a mail, be it for selection or rejection, you will receive it. And yes, so just be patient and all the best.
Yeah. From my side, it would be like many people might find it pessimistic, uh, but don't keep your entire focus on only one program. So MLH Fellowship is just an educational experience, and I have been a part of many of these programs where people literally go to a huge extent in getting selected to them, like Google Summer of Code or MLH Fellowship and Google Season of Talks. Like people get really competitive in these kind of programs. So one thing that we should realize is that life always goes on. So if one opportunity comes ahead and you don't get selected into that, you can always get into the next opportunity. So I have seen a lot of people who got rejected into MLH fellowship. Like one of my mentee actually got rejected in MLH fellowship even after both of the technical rounds, and later she got selected as an outreach intern because she took the rejection to her heart and she did a lot of hard work to make sure that her application stands out in the outreachy. So just make sure that whatever you do, you put in your necessary hard work. And if you don't get selected into that, things are not really much into your hand because we have a lot of application bias, human bias, or maybe some other factors that might be coming in. So the batch might get filled, or maybe your application was not like maybe they could not put you in some specific pod or some specific track. So it happens. So just don't take it to your heart and just simply move ahead. There are tons of things that you can contribute to.
That is right. We should always be motivated and keep applying no matter what. So it's time for Q&A. So if the people who are watching us, if you have any questions, please write it in the chat, and Sonal and Harsh would take it up. So there's a question that tips for first year students as we have no major achievements. So like, what should they do?
I guess I know two first year students who got selected into MLH fellowship, and the path that they follow was pretty straightforward. They participated in some hackathons. If you might not know, then MLH organizes its own set of hackathons. Some of them are like organized by MLH itself, some of them are like sponsored hackathons. So just go ahead, participate in them. Even if you know some basic C++ or basic HTML, you can make and prototype something that you can exactly showcase. and chances are very high that you might actually win some sort of prize, even if it is not like the top three prizes. It might be some sponsor prize, or it might be something like, I have seen prizes that is related to the worst hack, but you can win something, of course, over there. Even if you don't win something, you can get a lot of actionable feedback from the mentors. They might say that, okay, you have a front end app, but this doesn't exactly work, so you might need to develop some backend skills to make sure that this app works. So you can work on that, you can create your application as per that, and you can see that, okay, I participated in this hackathon, I engaged with these MLH mentors, with these MLH coaches, and they advised me on that, and this is the application that I have developed. So maybe you can consider me for the same. So even if you're a first student, there are tons of things that you can do over there. You can also go ahead and like try contributing to some open source program. Like there is literally an open source program going on every month. So just go ahead and participate in any one of them. Make a few of the PRs and try to use that to exactly showcase that given the right mentorship and guidance, you can do much more. And like I've seen a lot of first years making really impressive profiles that can put even the finalist students to shame. So yeah, the sky is your horizon, so just go ahead and capture it.
And yeah, don't think that since you're in your first year, it's too soon for you. So in my pod, there were two people, they were in high school. So one of them, they were in 11th grade, and the second one, they were in 12th grade. And so it's not too soon if you are in your first year. So don't think that, okay, I will not apply because I'm just starting out, I'm in my freshman year, I'll apply in my second year or in my third year. So that's not that, like, you should not think that. So they are, and it's not just the two people in my pod. So in our batch there were a lot of people who were in high school. So there are people from high school are applying, then you should also just go ahead.
Even my own pod member, like his name was Rachit. He was also in like class 11th or 12th, I remember. And he was also a GSOC mentor. So a guy who is not even like 18 years of age. He's an MLH fellow, he's a GCI finalist, I guess a grand winner. And he's also a GSOC mentor. So that was very impressive.
Yeah, so don't limit yourself. So even if you are in your first year, or if you're in your high school, you can achieve everything. So don't limit yourself because of, like, of where you are in your education.
Yeah.
So we have next question, that can we do fellowship or the pre-fellowship along with a full-time internship? So
So when I started, like when I got selected into MLH Fellowship, I was already interning at a company where I had full-time commitments. And when I left that company, I joined another company, which was Deep Source. And it is a Y Combinator backed startup. So if you might have participated in Hacktoberfest, you might have heard about this company's name. So like during my MLH fellowship, I like interned at two companies, which was pretty much a full-time commitment. Uh, so if you have any full-time commitments, you can simply reflect on your application that I will be committing only 20 to 25 hours per week, like a part-time commitment, so that you can be compensated according to that. If you have a full-time like requirement, you can easily fill that out in the application, and that is completely fine.
Yes, so during the interview, they will ask you that if you are available for 40 hours a week. And if you're not, you can just mention, yeah, I'll be available for part time, or I'll be available for full time. So it's all about like prioritizing and like how you are managing your time. So yes, and for the pre-fellowship, it's just it's 4 weeks, and there also they'll ask you for your time commitment. So whatever it is, you can just tell them that this is the scene, and I have these internships or these programs that I need to give my time to as well, and then they will let you know like what can be done.
being honest is important, whether you'll be able to devote time or not. Yeah. So do we have
There
any
were
more
times,
questions?
yeah, there
Yeah,
were
Harsh.
times when I used to like spend 10 hours every week like working. And there was a time when we spent like almost 50 to 60 hours every week in getting the project done. So it completely varies as per the things that you're doing.
Yeah. So I guess we don't have any more questions. So we'll wrap up the session. Thank you so much, Sonal and Harsh, for coming in.